Good morning, everybody. Welcome to CreateAWorld. This is our collaborator meeting where all of us who work together, play together, collaborate for having CreateAWorld are going to be with you today all together. For those of you who may not know what CreateAWorld is, we found ourselves in lots and lots of discussions about what it is to create a world, what's the world we want to create, what do we see forming out there. And then we decided, wait a minute, we want to hear from people, not just those of us right here or slightly expanded. We want to hear from others. And we began to engage with people, have guests come on for conversations, sharing what they saw and what they had been doing and participating in to create their worlds and share into the existing larger world. And so today's our collaborator meeting. And on our collaborator meetings, we just talk about what's rising, what we've noticed over the last month, what really stuck out for us about different conversations. So, welcome. Here we go. And who wants to jump in and start us?
I'm going to actually make a request. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Lori.
I want to really celebrate the conversation that happened last week with Victoria and Danielle. Tomorrow is World Tai Chi and Qigong Day, and they're talking of the yin yang and the beauty of being with the yin aspect. It is both of that. And the conversation was so broad and so deep that I've been riding like the wave of that energy. And I look forward to being in a community that is really focused on one world, one breath. And I want to invite, like people to just join in, whether it's a pause. How can you be with your yin energy? Pause and just breathe with all the people that are practicing and being together tomorrow all over the world. I'm like, I love that. I love tomorrow's day and the concept of it. And it just fed so nicely into what the conversation was last week. So, I'm happy to be here. And it's how do we move together to the next greater whole? And what are the steps that each one of us are taking to create the world in which we want to live in and exist in and connect with? So put a comment in, put a question in and join our conversation. I'm complete.
Lori, is there some place, because I didn't realize that tomorrow is the day, is there a space where we can go to be in practice? I know there are a lot of groups online that are doing this.
Yeah,
So,
if you actually I think if you connect with World Tai Chi and Qigong Day.org, they probably have like all the listings of where people are. I'm going to be in Columbus, Ohio, doing it outside with a group of people. And I think there's a virtual hookup, but I'm not coordinating it. So I'm not sure how all that works, but check out the website or just look, like type it in
Yeah,
World Tai
that's
Chi
what I
and
just wrote it
Qigong
down.
Day where you're located and see what pops up. It goes on every single year, the fourth Saturday of April. So, you know, it doesn't change.
Okay.
Yeah, just put it in your phone calendar, repeat yearly, and it'll like pop up and tell you, hello, I'm back. I'd love to, I'd love to kind of chime in what I've been thinking since last week as well. And it's already been spoken to into our small group before we came on live with you all. And I've been asking questions of people I've been meeting lately. And so one of my recent questions was, what does juicy mean for you? And for me, juicy is about the life I create, the world I create. And the community is vital to that. So what that prompted this morning in me is, what does community mean to you? And we could even start a dialogue this morning in the chat. Just give one word of what community means to you, and we can kind of spark the conversation from there if we want to. So I gave you mine. Anybody else?
Connection.
Mm.
Are we just giving one word, or are we writing a question?
It's simply an invitation to us and to everyone else who's listening in to just let's create a conversation about community. That's my invitation.
And about juicy, that's the one that really gets me. I mean, attracts me is, what is juicy to you? Wow.
Okay, Deb, what is juicy to
Well, I'm
you?
trying to condense it down because you asked me that and it was like, whoa. So I'm going to say vibrant and vital for now.
Juicy has something to do with being nourished and nurturing.
Hmm?
And that's that if you have that, it's I'm doing this with my hand because I'm trying to get a word that goes with it. But I used to belong to a group that would always talk about, does it feed you? Is it nurturing you? Is it nourishing you? And to me, any group or community has to nurture you and nourish you, and you it. So it's not like being it's not being fed like a baby. It's I nourish, be the group by my involvement in the community. I nourish it, and I am nourished in return. And any time that it's not that juicy character, that's what makes it a rich field to be within, then it dies. Or if in a community, some people are the nourishers and some people are nourished, that doesn't work either. It's got to be a back and forth of vitality to it, that I am fed and I feed.
I agree with that. And, bringing it back to the conversation Victoria had last week with Danielle, the community, it's it's a collective of people that can witness you, can see you in your juiciness, in your wholeness, in your awesomeness, even if you can't see that for yourself. And, I instantly went to that nice, like orange, that nice, succulent, juicy orange. And I'm like, it takes time to ripen, right? So we all are seeds that ripen at different times. And how can we nourish and celebrate that within that seed, we are already whole, like we are already that I think your conversation, it was like the universe is within us already. So it's like, wow, I want to be around people that just like invite that share that be that, if you will. I'm complete.
And for me, it's also about everything you've said, but also about connection. Um, there's something about reciprocity, one of my favorite words. It's a big word this year, but there's a difference. It's reciprocity with vibrancy and just this pure love for being together with those in your community that you have common purpose with, common um, common characteristics with, and just it comes down to really simplest form of just the love of being together, really, too. Just the love of being together. That creates, as you said, Lori, it creates actually the soil, the nurturing soil to grow something together, which is what I experience here. I mean, it's just it makes my day every day. You know, it makes me relish getting up to peek around the next corner to see what's going to happen today in our community.
This is reminding me of the C put in a post about a trillium, the flower, if you
Yeah.
saw it in the field of Tantramat. It's a WhatsApp group. And this flower in many ways kind of exemplifies what we're talking about, because they're showing this beautiful little white flower. Okay. And what they say is it takes 9 years before it can flower. And isn't that true about communities that we're in? They don't instantaneously feed you. In other words, you have to put time into the community. And when it flowers, it's amazing. And you have to preserve it. And the whole article was about don't ever pick a trillium, because it can live for 25 years if you don't pick it. And after 9 years, it gives you flowers every year. But it's the relationship between the ants and the trillium and the soil is one of those dynamic that allow a beautiful thing like a trillium flower to bloom. And I think that's true about community and connection, is that it takes all these different elements coming in. And if it isn't an interactive whole, it can't be sustained as well. It isn't rich. That would be my statement. Yeah, I'm complete.
And that requires vulnerability. So in order to be able to, to create the safety and the nourishment, and I think first of all, we each need to be able to come into community in our own unique and essential design. And to me, part of being nourished by a community is being seen and heard and acknowledged for the unique and essential self that you bring to the community, because then you are in a place to contribute to the community. But doing all that requires a lot of vulnerability in a world where we've been taught that you can choose to be in this box or that box or that box, but you're not allowed to show up as 2 parts of this box, 3 parts of that box, 7 parts this, but right. I mean, so we're talking about creating a space where people can color outside the lines.
And the space where people can grow and change over time. When I was a kid, we lived in Chicago, and one thing that was very true about the neighborhood that we lived in was that what you were like when you moved in was the way they saw you for the rest of your life. I moved into the neighborhood when I was 6. We left when I was 13, but I was still in the box of the 6-year-old they met. So I think there are communities that will nurture you to grow and be different and change over time and how you dance within the community. And there's others that the mistake they make, I think it's a mistake, is when they say, well, now we know who you are and that's the only way you can contribute. And then it doesn't work. You lose vital elements of your community when you do that, I think. Because I love to see people grow and change. You know? Okay, I'm complete.
I almost didn't come on the call today. I had a heart procedure last Thursday, and I'm deep in an inquiry, a very, very personal inquiry, which is not usually my focus is on creating structures within which new realities can rise. And my focus is others, bringing my wisdom and my capacity on behalf of others and life and creation. But this is probably the most personal journey I've ever personally experienced because it's rocked my world, not my circumstantial world. Well, yes, my circumstantial world, but my inner world. It's rocked my inner world. Before I got on the call today, I was listening to the Kabbalion. It's a Hermetic philosophy that is pretty much the foundation of all our modern religions, regardless of which religion it is, turned into their own spin. But it was interesting to listen to the conversation about community because my experience is that we are just now in the possibility of a kind of community that existed way before our time, our lifetime. And in my terminology, I would call it community held in the arms of the beloved, knowing that we're loved. And a tremendous amount of religion, which is not theology, by the way. Theology always goes back to the root of all existence, which is the all indivisible, unbreakable, unending, eternal, infinite nature of our existence. But survival has been such a huge part of humanity's trauma for quite a while that community has become a respite. A good community has become a respite for the toils and troubles of our time, and very, very necessary. I don't know how on earth people make it alone. And yet in the United States of America, we have more people isolated and alone than we have people in community. But the other part about it is that there's a frequency level, there's a vibrational level that is cracking the code on everything. Everything that we've codified, everything that we think is how things go. And I really think that Israel and Palestine are demonstrating that. The people I've been with, at least on one of the threads we have called "Have Them Be Not Afraid," they're very clear with each other that this is a war that was sparked by an incorrect relationship with God, whether it's Jewish or Islam, and that nothing in the Kabbalah speaks of war, not one sentence. In fact, it's the most poetic book you'll ever hope to read. Nothing in the Torah speaks of war. So there's something cracking, which I think is a lot like the Hermetic science, towards all expressions of being part of a greater power are starting to eke very, very tenderly and very, very hardly at all into barren land, into where the juice, which is the question, the juice of spirit has been denied so many human beings. And it's made some human beings become figureheads for what should be, in my opinion, a human's direct relationship with what created them. So when I listen to this conversation, I'm pretty sure we're mostly speaking about secular community, because the spiritual communities are, unless they're underneath a certain discipline or a certain religion, but to have a community of each human being having their own direct link with the power and forces of creation of which they're a part, I'm predicting that by the time we get to about 2027, there will be an element of that. It's certainly what the field of Tantra Mad and the Magician of Self is seeking to get access to. In the Hermetic science, it's a science of non-duality. It's where the blending of opposites, where the so above and so below sustain and maintain the ability for creation to exist. And if one of them is out of balance, if the relationship to the relative world is out of balance with the relationship to the absolute world, these huge inharmonics begin to occur. We're in that right now, and we're still swimming through them in ways that that are really what's the word I want? The best we can do with what we have, because in my opinion, there's something much, much greater going on than we even realize, and that it will play itself out in the unfolding story of beyond Palestine and Israel. It will flow out into the other cultures of where certain beliefs of we're the one and you're the enemy start to fail. So I'm just saying, I think when it's juicy for me, it's juicy because we're all the expressions of a divine providence. We're all the expression of a great living spirit that has sought to come into form. And that I think in the next 3 to 4 years, that there'll be human beings that actually can exist again in the feeling of that. And in the meantime, we try to tend to vulnerability, and we try to tend to intimacy. The gathering of the Field of Tantra Mach call on Wednesday, I texted Janice and Jim, and I said, well, that met my pictures. Because every person who shared was in their intimacy, was in their vulnerability, was in their transparency, with no like it was the water they were swimming in. And that's community for me, the ability for human beings to be intimate with themselves and be intimate with their direct relationship with whatever they are connected to, that some people might call creation or source or the great living spirit or God. I'm complete.
I'm really feeling the pause. and appreciating how a pause can give presence to absorption. So it's like I don't want to speak, and yet at the same time I want to speak to the pause that we're in. So that it doesn't get so community can get caught up in the busyness of doing, and community can be the place where we can rest in ourselves. And so I'm feeling that pause moment after you spoke, Tundra, as can we just invite a moment to absorb? Thank you.
One of the things I hear both from what Liz spoke and what Tantra spoke is reciprocity with others not like us. And there's community that forms around doing this, the business of life. That's fine. Community can form around anything and on behalf of anything. But there with I'm interested in what draws us across differences, what draws us to well, to borrow a title from a book, behaving as if the God in all life matters. So that there's no necessarily disruption of this community, that community. But the something that's underneath and across all of them. I don't have any answers or anything to offer, but
I don't know if there is an answer, Deb.
yeah.
The answer. Because when you're speaking, I started seeing all these different, it's almost like watching cells. And they all had threads connecting them one to the other, but they were still these intact vital cells. And I think of community that way, that each of these communities, again, I go back to feeding, nourishing their members and being nourished by their members. But some of those members are also connected to other communities.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, if all the communities are there to make life whole, to support all life, and that seems to me a big measure of it is, are you there to for the greater whole. And one of the things that we've been watching is people, young men particularly, gravitating to violent groups that aren't there to make life whole, but they must be serving something, or they wouldn't continue to exist as groups that they operate within. And maybe it's safety, maybe it's survival, but there's elements of what a community is like are those groups. And we're really talking about communities where life is nourished and connecting to the whole and paying attention to creating something that works for the greater whole of life. And that's not just humans, it's plants and animals and waters, and it's that basic orientation that to me will feed this earth and feed humanity to create paradise.
I think sometimes we act as if we know what the greater whole of which we're a part is. And I'm not so sure we do much.
Oh, God, no.
Because I remember reading years and years ago about, because I was anti-gang and all that. And then I read or heard a lecture, I'm not sure which, that the root of gangs is actually provides belonging and family and stability and a way to access income frequently for a lot of people. And there's honor, there's a code, there's a lot of components that we say are structures of, real society. And yeah, there's aspects that are not life enhancing according to my measures, but there's a lot of aspects of the dominant society that I live in that is not the least bit life enhancing. And you're not supposed to say that out loud very much. And but there's the same component of a structure and a sense of belonging and a way to identify and so forth and so on. Interrelate, there's a code or codes. And when you were just talking about the cells, I just read an article a couple days ago about scientists witnessing a phenomenon of two distinct cells merging. I wish I remembered the science term, but that's such a rare phenomenon in evolution. And they weren't two of the same kind of cells, like two red blood cells. It was two different things merging to become a new organism. And so I'm sorry I can't remember that term. But I think it's more like that, and more like discovering. We all have ideas of what the greater whole of which we're part is. We all have uh, ideas and capacities to perceive and be present to that, and know what of that is life enhancing, nourishing, and what versions of that are not. I'm finding it interesting to watch. Tantra, can you put that, what you said you're listening to, in the chat? I forgot my pen, or something, because I'm interested in following up on that. I think that for me, that calls up something that would give me some language to describe what I'm just starting to be. present to. I think I'm complete for now.
I've been really present to, when you were talking about the cells, Deb, that our language and how we use our language
Mm.
really impacts our cells. I've been playing around with language with my unpacking group, writing the creation exercises, and seeing how being in a wondering of how language can impact cells, literally. Dr. Emoto, is one of my heroes, and looking at how different words impacted water crystals or water molecules is just fascinating. And so I've been playing around with that as well. And so when we all paused just now, for me, that was an intake, a completely multisensory intake of that language, uh, and letting it feed my cells, which then brings me to, I think, as humans many of us now are really beginning uh, to feel what so many of our dear teachers have been telling us lately, which is we are part of everything. I've heard the words for so many years, and now I'm starting to really feel a connection and an infusion into my own cells, such as we are stardust, we are the soil, we are, each element. And there's really something to that. And feeling that inner connection. That again, bringing it back around to community is such a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And then I'm gonna ping off another tangent because I feel this is important. We were also talking about vulnerability, but also and I'll say that probably the same thing that you've said, just in different language, that being part of community is that supports each other is also being able to speak out what we're struggling with, and knowing that what we're struggling with uh, actually feeds the community, um, and gives the community vibrancy and energy. In our pain of something we're struggling with, it feeds and seeds uh, communities. So I think I'm saying the same thing, just a different way. And I feel that that's important to also bring into the conversation. So, one, that we're everything, um, and to um, really be able to embrace in our communities, embrace our own vulnerability and transparency, and be able to be in the safety of experiencing pain and being held in that. So I think I'm complete there.
Because that's how we create new realities.
Say more, Janice, please.
So as human beings, we're on this journey through this whole life, right? We are the orange seed, but then we take, somewhere between 70 and 110 years to become that big, full, juicy orange. And so, but along that process, there is growth, there's change, I turn left and I explore here, and then I turn right and I explore there, and I discover, and I start to see pieces that I thought were separate coming together. And so all that process creates an internal evolution. And so as I witness mine to my community, and they witness back to me, then ideas that were just ideas can actually grow roots and become a new tree. Just look at the various roles of men and women and how they differ from one society to another. I mean, that there, and I mean, to me, always when you want to think about healthy communities, I always go back to, let's look at First Nation people, let's look at Indigenous people, because inevitably you see much more balanced realities of who any individual can be in those communities than you see in some of our more modern communities. And so in the witnessing of the new ideas and allowing those ideas to take root and become something new, then there's more available for everybody. And everyone has that opportunity then to move into that place of exploration and that growth and that evolution. And that's, I mean, I know for me, that's when I feel alive. That's when things feel juicy for me, is when when our being is free to evolve. And there's so much absolute genius across the human spectrum. And I mean, we have everything we need to have paradise right here, right now. What we don't always have is the room for everyone to contribute their gifts and abilities to sustaining and maintaining paradise. And to me, in true community, that's what we make room for.
And it's what the community generates.
Right.
It's what the community generates within community. In the USA, at least, we generate within individualism. Mine to do. And it's not as strong as ours to do. And it is true that most of ours to do has been, as collectives, is against something, either being for or against something. But the societies that lasted the longest were the societies that within the community, groups got together that forwarded a piece that was theirs to do, but they did it on behalf of the whole, and not just the whole of their God, but the whole of the expression of the community as a multi-fractaled expression of life. And the other thing you said I want to really highlight is I've known about this time for a long time, and I know you all know that about me. And it is absolutely brings me to stop how potent it's getting. And I know on our call, our gathering call that Janice and Jim and I lead, I was stunned listening to everyone talking because I could feel we were in a whole system response. But we don't get to have it just one way. We're also in a whole system collapse. So whether we like it or not, evolution is being forced upon us. It isn't our personal choice. And so what starts to be dominant in my experience is what's missing. Literally what's missing. Fundamental systems that once had human beings operate in unity with all life. And at some point, and Don Beck does a great job of this, Michelle Smallwright does it, there's a lot out there. But at some point, the individual has to be willing to operate in a communal setting because it's actually communities that keep us vital. And where, like you said, Janice, that there's somebody has something that somebody else could use or somebody else could need. One of the fun things where I live is we just put things out on the sidewalk. We put our umbrella out on the sidewalk. We put our exercise, the thing see left, I don't know what it's called, exercise bench out on the sidewalk. I put bags and clothes out on the sidewalk, and people carefully put the bags, what they wanted in the bags, and then carefully pack back the box, what they didn't want. And then I got a doorbell ring the other day where the guy says, you really are giving this away? And I said, yeah, I'm really giving this away. And he said, well, I got to go get my truck to get it. And I said, well, why don't you put it along, to the side of my driveway? If it's in my driveway, people won't think I'm giving it away. And he said, oh, thank you so much. But it's an amazing, coming from a very poor state is a very, very lovely experience because there's not surplus in any manner. But we have been living in surplus and we're starting to lose surplus. And we didn't have raspberries for 3 weeks in our sprouts down here. So this isn't just a exercise for me. CreateAWorld is not an exercise for me. And what's the next cute thing to talk about? It's a place for human beings to have an ability to listen and be with other human beings that are kind of taking it on. And our thinking, the interesting thing about the Hermetic science is that, I just laughed. I wish I'd known it. I would have put it in my book, You as the Mind of Creation. But fundamentally, the Hermetic science is based on that the only way it can express itself is mental. It thinks itself into existence. I am that, and where I am, that is. And so our thinking matters. Our thinking, not trying to decide what the truth is or what the right answer is, but literally being able to think. It's really interesting to see how much muscle we as human beings have now to think, and to think that which is not in existence yet, which is not yet so. And these next 3 years will be a lot of thinking that which is not yet so. So getting our little noggin to like even listening to this call, to make it an opportunity to think community, not to arrive at, well, this means that and that means this, and here we go, like outside of ourselves, but what we can begin to generate as ourselves, as community, just kind of take it on. Community is where you're standing. It's not some group outside of you. Community is where we're standing. Complete.
That brings me in relationship to language and the creation exercises. And how do we internalize our own definition, our own meaning, our own access to community, and not allow others or whatever outside of ourselves to define that for us. And that it creates an opportunity, kind of feeding on what Deb said about, do we know what is out there? Or like, what is the vastness? And do we even need to know what the vastness is? Because the vastness is within us. And how do we tap into that, all dimensionals of our, all the advisory centers, our physical being, our mental, emotional being, our spiritual being? How do we align with that vastness? And it takes the language. It takes, looking more deeply, or being more deeply with how we present is not the word I want to say, but that's the word that popped in. How do we express? How do we express that vulnerability? How do we express that transparency? Is it from that aligned, connected way of being, holding both the yin and the yang aspects of ourselves? And that goes back to what you were talking about with the gangs, Deb. What is the community? In the yin yang sign, the Tai Chi sign, there's a little bit of each side in each other. I mean, we are all of it. And how do we tap into the generating, the life enhancing way of being in relationship to, rather than focused on that, the differentiators? And because we are all, I mean, this is so cliche to some degree, but we are all the same, one world, one breath, right? Because we all have that vastness within us. And do we allow ourselves the time to be in relationship with another in that vastness? And wow, some days I'm there more than others. And the yin yang of it, right? And CreateAWorld to me is that place where we can be in the vastness with everyone that tunes in, that shares, that is a part of this moment, this now moment. So I love it.
I could lick you.
I want to tell my how to, not like instruction for anyone, but how I tapped it yesterday. I had to go to the optometrist to get a whatever form filled out for the DMV, and it didn't go the way I wanted. It was supposed to be one and done, really simple, and it didn't. So what she saw was some possibility for something really scary, or maybe nothing, because my eyes are different. But I didn't have photos from when I was a kid to show her. And so what she wanted me to do, the next steps, everything she said was a complete catch-22 to me, and with a large cascade effect, potentially. And I got upset. And I think she's young. And so she got upset. I've never had a doctor start to cry never. And I just, there was something that just had me know that my resolution wasn't, there wasn't going to be resolution. So from how I was responding, so I gave her a big hug and I said, it's going to be fine. I will do what you're telling me to do. It's going to be fine. And I think I surprised her a little at giving her a big hug like a grandmother. It's going to be fine. And then I was standing waiting. Russ went to get the car, and the man came up to change out the recycled, and I just started chatting with him. And we talked about inane stuff, but it was lovely. It didn't matter what we were talking about, for me anyway, and I think for him, there was connection at a level I had to have right then, because I wanted to be stabilized in the most life enhancing arena, not suppressing what I was feeling, although I was for the moment, technically, because of where I was in public, not, just, and it was lovely. And I could be where I wanted to be. Then I got in the car and talked to Tantra and Russ both at the same time. There's a strong chance there's nothing, because, and that, but I tapped my community. Then I tapped more community later and did as much weft and weave as I could to be present to what I was present to without tanking into some of my conditioning of, life sucks and then you die. And having that run the show. And by this morning, with some responses I got, I'm actually stable in life enhancing. I'm circumstantially, nothing's particularly changed, but I don't know how to explain it. I got stable where from where I wanted to be, that was more life enhancing, and certainly allows me to keep going on some things that I got to keep going on. But it doesn't change some of the other stuff. It just, the words are really awkward. For me, I would say puts it in its place. I wanted it to have a different place and a different, say. I don't know. I'm not very good with words in these kind of things, but
I don't think there are words for you said, I don't know how to explain it, but that's the difference. Sharing something and explaining something are two separate words.
very good.
Being with others, being present. I just spent 4 months
Yep.
not knowing if one of those days I would die.
Yep.
And that was really a bitch.
Yep.
And if I hadn't had the community, their vital life force, their world, I was reading about what everybody was doing. There was life around me.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't drown in the
Yes.
horror of what was happening to me.
Exactly.
Because there was life everywhere, like the guy
Yes.
at the trash can. And so it's a different world that of sharing and being present to what we're present to. And we have been living in a world that gives us explanation for why life works the way it does. That's not living.
Yeah.
We're talking about living.
Yeah.
And the only way we can do it is trip over our feet and try to share what's touched us to the best of our ability.
Yeah. where all of it's happening at the same time.
Right.
But-
And
but
we're
the-
at the top of the hour.
Oops, okay.
It's okay. Whoops, we probably should do a create a world on that too.
Yeah,
So some of us are gonna meet after this call, everybody. Because whether you're part of a community, you are community to us.
yeah,
It's why we started Create a World. And we're gonna meet because we don't know. Some of us will meet because some of us don't know how Create a World is going to go forward. Because we have the same challenges all of you have of how to rise into what might be the next recursion of being within which all of our individual lives are occurring. And it may not be create a world because they're two things that affect existence. Our linear timeline and what we do in our linear timeline and what's calling. And one of the things I know, since I have a 12,000-year-old memory, is sometimes what's calling some isn't calling enough people. And you go back to the drawing board, you start working again where people can hear and where people can be present. And then one day you let it rise again. The magician of self that I'm doing presently, I tried in my 20s and tried again in my 30s, and it just wasn't time. And it is time now. And we don't know if Create a World, it's time, or maybe it's a year from now, or maybe we did the best we could with what was available to us. But I love this group of people and their dedication to their lives and to the lives of others and their direct relation to source. And it isn't necessarily a religion, but to source. So we'll hope to see you on the other side.